A dog lunging, barking, growling at people is a problem, right? Especially when it happens in the dark and especially if it's a big black dog. So, in today's episode of A Dog's Soul, an empath's guide to your dog's feelings, we're talking about a Cane Corso mix who had exactly that issue, and I'm sure he is not alone out there. So maybe your dog is a little bit timid around people in the twilight and night as well. So stay tuned and have fun. Alright, so today we're talking about Thor. Thor is a 4-year-old Cane Corso cross lab, and despite his big name, he is an even larger scaredy cat. So he is a big softie. He's very, very friendly, very adorable. He did have no socialization in the first few weeks of his life, which is a real problem. So he was born on a farm and kept in a shed with mom and probably siblings. But he was not introduced to any outside stimuli. He was not introduced to people, dogs, sounds, whatever. And this is always a very, very bad idea. Now, he was adopted pretty early, so they could show him some things, but genetics, so Cane Corso, plus no socialization with people, was prone to show sometimes, right? And it did. Now, I started working with them because he pulled like a freight train. And this was the main concern because he was a big boy. He still is. And we don't want our big dogs pulling, right? But during our time together, he started barking at the fence at people and dogs, and also started barking at some people at home. And mom worked from home, so she had clients coming over, and he used to be really friendly with clients when he was a puppy and even as a teenager. And also with the family, there was never a problem. He greeted me super friendly and there was no issue, but he started to look a little bit worried about some people and barked at them. And then he started barking at people on the street. Now, we did an assessment and we tried to figure out what was the common ground of all of these things. And it was light. So he always seemed more timid when it got darker. That's pretty normal. A lot of dogs who are not 100% sure around people or things or whatever get more timid in the twilight or when it gets dark because they don't see as well, right? And people also might act differently. They might walk faster and just don't stroll around as easily as when it's light out. So this seemed to be what triggered him. And of course, some people were more difficult for him than others. And I'm guessing it was scent because it wasn't always hats or something like that. Sometimes it's always hats. Like if the dog, as a puppy, has never learned that people sometimes wear those funny things on their heads, they can get concerned about it. But for him, this was not true. So scent is my best guess. Now, they are living in a small town and he's a big black dog. So lunging, barking, growling at people is a problem. They get scared. They know who they are, right? So people know each other in this town. They know who the dog is. They have met him as a puppy and now he's lunging, barking, growling at them. And this is a problem. This is becoming an issue between neighbors, and if you're living in a small town, you know what I'm talking about, right? People are talking, and this can very fast turn into wildfire. So we had to fix it fast. And it's not like it's no issue for the dog, right? Dogs don't lunge and bark and growl for no reason at all. And for Thor, it was very obvious that he was scared. He was insecure around people. He did not know how to behave. He did not know that he could just rely on mom. Not because she did something wrong, but just because he's the type of dog who would just figure it out by himself, right? So dogs like that need to learn to rely on us humans first. So this was something that we had to address. And since pulling and aggression are both stress related, we needed to do a stress reduction first. Yes, I know, I always say that, but it's always true, right? So if our dogs are completely chillaxed and just breathe through life, they don't have any problems and they don't cause any problems either. So if we see things come up, right? So we see our dogs misbehaving, we see them just do some insane stuff. We need to help them feel more comfortable in their day-to-day life, and we help them with reducing stress everywhere we can. We cannot just reduce stress completely. That's not possible. We cannot remove everything. And for Thor, he was living with small kids, and this is always a thing, right? The house is loud, especially when friends come over. The kids are energetic, and he did not have a spot for himself where the kids couldn't go. So this was something we introduced. He would get a relaxation zone where the kids could not enter or would not enter. They were really nice kids. So they respected his relaxation zone. That was awesome. And we also introduced walks in a quiet area, so decompression walks. It was pretty easy for them because a small town where I live usually is surrounded by nature. Not untouched nature, unfortunately, but kind of nature. As much as we have nature here. So they would just drive to a field, and then he would just walk on a field or into the woods a little bit, and he could just relax and sniff around and all those things. Now, what that did, only these two little things, was it got rid of the pulling and the barking at the fence completely. So there was no more training needed, which is awesome, right? You switch around two small things in your daily routine, and it wasn't even any kind of effort for mom, right? Because she said, well, I like the morning walks in nature because it helps me start my day differently. And that's awesome. We can do these things in a way that helps us too. We don't have to do just what the dog needs. We can, most of the time, find some common ground. Now, we only needed something as a strategy for people. And what I like to do is I like to implement something that stays the same for every person in the beginning, even persons who are not an issue for the dog. So even if there is somebody who the dog couldn't care less about, I want the strategy in place, because the more we practice that, the safer the dog feels with the strategy. So it gives us more opportunity to train if we just stick to the same thing for every person we meet. Now, a small town doesn't provide that many people. So if we only pick and choose the ones Thor is timid about, it would become a lot more difficult. It'd become a lot more watching him very closely and reading his body language really well and all those things. So it's easier to just say, well, there is a person, please act this way all the time. The disadvantage of that is that we have to pick something that doesn't interrupt walking that much, and it's very easy to do. So, for example, if we took like a sit and we asked Thor to sit down at every single person, and we started working on the town square, and there are 20 people coming by, we would not get out of the sit. So we would not be able to walk anywhere. That's not a solution, right? That can be a management technique, but it's not a long-term solution. So what we wanted for Thor is looking at a person in a calm way. We wanted to connect positive emotions with people in general, every single person we met. We wanted looking away, and we wanted either sniffing or telling mom to help with the nose target. So we had technically 4 things to train. Now, the first 2 are super quick. It's just an engage-disengage game. So we teach a dog, look at something and look back to mom. And to be honest, it only takes capturing the dog looking at a person anyway, because the dog will look at some person at some point, right? And since we work together, I could be the person in the beginning. He was looking at me anyway, since I happened to have treats on me, so we could introduce this game pretty fast. And of course, since mom was rewarding him for looking at me, he started to look at me and then expect a treat. So he was looking at me and then looking at mom. Exactly what we wanted, right? And as soon as he was fluent in that, we could add more people. And the huge advantage with a dog being afraid of people is that you can very easily find spots where people run around not caring about you or your dog at all. They're just doing what they are there to do. So you can choose the distance and just train as much as you want. It's very, very easy. And in my opinion, it's a lot easier than with dogs. So I love working on trouble around people. All right. Now, if you don't have somebody to help you with this first step, right? So you then don't have a person that you can practice the first look at that person, look at me thingy together. Then you can just teach your dog to look at you on cue. So this is also very quickly trained. And then you can start working with random people. You, of course, keep the people safe. People don't know what you're doing, so keep them safe. If there is any risk of biting or the dog escaping from the harness or the leash or your grip or whatever, use a muzzle, right? And that muzzle would have needed training in the beginning. So always safety first, right? But then you can just start working with the people you meet on the street. You can just work with people you find in a specific spot and start working with your dog, looking at the person, and then you give your cue and your dog's looking at you. Now, Thor was pretty quick with these new exercises and he loved learning, which is true for most dogs, right? If they see a reason why they should listen, they actually like doing stuff for us, right? So we had that pretty quickly. Now, teaching a dog to sniff is also super fast, usually, depending on how safe the dog feels in the environment. So we started on the decompression walks, actually. And it's just throwing some treats on the ground and adding a cue to it. And how many treats varies from throw to throw. So sometimes it's one, sometimes it's more than one. So we encourage the dog to sniff around after finding the treat. And that actually becomes a sniffing. And of course, a nose target is one of my basic things to train. And this is also something he picked up really quickly. Now, you may wonder why he should do that when he needs help. Well, he now learned a behavior that feels good due to repetition with rewards, right? So whenever dogs don't feel good, they do something that they think will make them feel better. So chances are good he will try the new thing. And if he doesn't, we can cue it. That's why we add verbal cues or hand signals or whatever, any kind of cue. So if the dog doesn't get the idea all by himself, we can actually nudge him a little bit in the direction we want. And again, the dog will remember, oh yeah, that felt good. Do it, and then we help him. And of course, since this all feels good, we can make this connection stronger and stronger and stronger until we have a strategy that works every single time. And as soon as Thor picked that up, we started moving the training sessions later and later and later until it was twilight. And whenever he felt good in twilight, we moved it to when it was really dark. And in the beginning, whenever you tried it with your dog, there might be setbacks, especially when your dog gets startled. So I would pick an area where it's most unlikely that a person suddenly appears very close to you so your dog gets startled. Because a startle is a negative emotion, right? And we want to connect people with positive emotions. That's why we use rewards, right? And only when your dog's really, really fluent in the whole process, in the whole strategy, in everything you have been training, I would start taking it into real life. So actually using it on walks. Because walks are unpredictable, right? People are just spawning somewhere. Same with dogs, right? If your dog's dog reactive and you just try to practice on walks, you always have an issue of too little space, dog suddenly appearing around a corner, and so on. So it's a lot easier to really be fluent in the thing you want to have, the behavior you want to see, and then you take it into real life, right? Tell me in the comments if your dog is insecure around people or dogs. I would love to know. And have fun training. We'll see each other next time. Bye.